Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo.
Oh my God!
If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Plotaholics podcast. I'm joined, as always, by the window to my stairs, Brian Tan. Brian, welcome in to another episode. How are you this week?
Doing pretty good. Just taking it one day, one step at a time, doing what we do.
Yeah.
And just making it work one day at a time. Doing what we
That's all we can do, right?
That's right. That is right.
This week we are kicking off kind of an unofficial run of movie coverage, and that is we're going to be looking at some of the bigger parody films of the last little bit, and we're kicking things off with the classic "I'm Gonna Get You Sucka."
Yeah, well, you know what? I felt really, really bad, especially with how the horse taste that Hot to Try left in your mouth last week. So I wanted to suggest a string that would sort of fit better with your palate.
A little bit of a palate cleanser for sure.
Yeah. Sort of a nice tasty chaser to the absinthe of horridness that was
Well, it is helpful. I will say that we received some listener mail, and if I can find a way to bring it up, then that will be most excellent.
I am a big fan of listener mail.
Yeah, let's see what I can do here.
I'm checking out our download count here, and yeah, Hot to Trot. It's definitely a low point of the last couple of weeks for sure.
I mean, for sure, but if you take a look at it over on the YouTube,
it's an obscure comedy though too.
Go look at it on YouTube.
All right, I will. I'm going. As Miss Odette is trying to crawl into my lap, she doesn't realize that she's not a lap dog. No, you are not a lap dog. Ow, stop doing that. That hurts. You ever have your dog is, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of views over on the tube of you.
Yeah, right. So, you folks get into it,
Thank you for loving us on the tube, you.
Yeah, so well, let me make sure. One message.
I'm very excited for this. I really am.
We did get another follow-up from Al over on Twitter. That's Big Al 937.
Not Al.
Well, we got an Al double doozy because we got one from your friend Al as well. So we'll get to that in a second.
Oh, is he still hating on us for our take on Grosse Pointe Blank?
No, he seems to have the ability to move forward.
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad.
So
I'm glad Canadians have a forgiving nature.
Right, yeah. Big Al 937 says that he was currently listening to the Hot to Trot episode and laughing hysterically.
Nice.
So that is a vote of confidence. Now, Al Grego of the Produce Stand podcast wrote in, and he says, listening to your Hot to Trot episode, and I wish I was on while you guys talked about Bobcat because the guy was so much more than the voice. My wife and I saw him do stand-up in 2000. He never once used the voice. He was trying to distance himself from it, and he was hilarious. He's also become quite an accomplished director. The films he's directed are legit good films. The one he talks about, Robin Williams, in the clip you guys played, is called World's Greatest Dad. It's a great dark comedy about the father of a kid who kills himself by autoerotic asphyxiation. It's a heavy film about suicide and depression, made all the more heavy when you consider what happens to Robin Williams later. And so that is from our buddy Al Grego over at the Produce Stand.
Oh, cool. You know, maybe we'll visit that. Maybe we should do a tribute to Robin Williams. Do a couple of Robin Williams films. What do you think?
I mean, we could definitely do worse for sure.
Yeah, I think that film. Maybe
you're just looking for a way to get to Mrs. Dalloway.
Mrs. Dalloway or Doubtfire.
There it is, Doubtfire. Okay.
Actually, I was looking for a way to get to a Bicentennial Man. That's my favorite.
You know, I think Bicentennial Man is underrated for sure.
It truly is. It's like so great, and everyone in that movie is just every scene that they're in. Even our best buddy that we don't know, Bradley Whitford, kind of hits a home run for like the 5 minutes he's in the movie.
Yeah, I think that one is solid.
He is extremely Bradley Whitford in his Bradley Whitford appearance.
Absolutely. So that's, we always appreciate hearing from you guys. You can always get in contact with us via the email at plotaholicspodcast@gmail.com. You can also shoot us a DM anywhere at Plotaholics. That's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And
to our DMs.
We also love to get the positive ratings and reviews. And you can just keep the negative ones in your pocket. So
right. And you know what? And join us every Sunday between 11 a.m. and noon on the
It's always
Twitch.
random, honestly.
It's pretty random, but if you have an Amazon account, then you've got a Twitch account. So why don't you follow the show over here on the Twitch? You'll get alerted to when we go live, and you can even comment to us during the show because you can watch us live on Twitch.
It's true. And if I like your comment, then I might talk about it and put it on the screen.
Well, whether we like you or whether we don't like you, chances are we'll talk about you.
Well, Brian will. I'll just ignore you.
Yeah.
If I don't like
as non-confrontational as I am, I still like talking shit. So
yeah. So if you're out there and you're listening in today and you are wondering or you're thinking to yourself, I have not seen a lot from Brian Tan on social media lately, then I have a little bit of a spoiler alert for you. You got defriended.
Yeah, Brian Tan has been taking a break from social media, and then one day I just happened to look at my Facebook friends list, and it's like, I don't talk to most of these people. I don't hear from most of these people. And some of these people that I have talked to, I haven't heard hide nor hair from them for 6 months to 2.5 years. So I went on a little purge.
There you go.
I started this weekend at over 1,200 people on my Facebook
list. Which is a lot of people on a Facebook.
Yeah. Now I'm down to about 500.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
On trimming the fat.
Getting albatross off of my back.
There you go. So, Brian, would you like to kick things off for us with a little tanopsis of this week's advertised content? I'm gonna get you, sucka.
You dirty mother. Yeah, absolutely. So, in this homage to 70s blaxploitation films, the genius Keenen Ivory Wayans gives us this look at Jack Spade, a soldier who comes home to find out his younger brother Junebug has OG'd. He's over gold. And he has decided he is going to take a fight to the man, Mr. Big, with the help of black heroes such as John Slade, Hammer, Slammer, Kung Fu Joe. The soldier boy is letting you know he's going to get you, sucker.
Excellent. Widely considered a sort of a spiritual relative, cousin, brother to the Naked Gun series.
Kind of. It's another side of the Naked Gun series. It's more. Naked Gun spoofs the detective stories of the 40s and 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm Gonna Get You Sucka is a spoof of the blaxploitation genre. And I think that it does a really, really good job at poking fun of the genre and the tropes without being disrespectful. And I think that this film and another film that Keenen Ivory Wayans was involved in, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, Hollywood Shuffle, which
I've not.
starred it's a Robert Townsend vehicle that Keenen Ivory Wayans is also involved in, and a lot of the same actors in this film, including Damon Wayans, Keenen Ivory Wayans. Oh my God, why is his name John Witherspoon? Were also in that film, and
Mm-hmm.
it really sort of showcases in this time period where black actors and black entertainers, it was like in white Hollywood, well, we want an Eddie Murphy type. And they actually touch on that in Hollywood Shuffle. We want an Eddie Murphy type, or musically, we want a Michael Jackson type. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And they sort of anti go with that. And I feel that I'm Gonna Get You Sucka does the exact same thing. And we also see in this film a lot of alums of what would become In Living Color as well, with David Allen Greer and Chris Rock in a very, very early role, pre-slapping. And
Well, every role that Chris Rock has had was pre-slap.
yeah, that's true. It's just funny seeing Chris Rock after that. It's just kind of I always find it strange to see an early work of an actor after after a controversial event.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of like, wow, I remember when your relevancy was for your talent, not for what's in the news.
I would argue that he's still fairly relevant for his talent.
I mean, I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that a lot of his when the 98% of his relevancy was his talent,
Yeah.
and now it's more. Now a lot of it is going toward the controversy, where it should just stay on the talent.
Oh, well, yeah. I would completely agree with that. I would also point out that he didn't ask to be a part of that controversy.
No, he did not. No, he did not. I mean, you know what? But that's something also that we said we're not going to get into. We have our thoughts on it. We talked about it. We're not getting into it because that's also old ass news by now.
Yeah.
It was more just an offhand joke. But it's, but even still, you want to talk about a film that pays homage to blaxploitation films. I mean, you've got Isaac Hayes, Jim Brown, Bernie Casey, Antonio Fargas. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of blaxploitation era stars.
So I have admittedly very little experience with blaxploitation cinema. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what blaxploitation is, just kind of in general, like what as a genre, what is it doing? Who makes it? Who's in it? Who's it for?
Sure. Well, the blaxploitation genre it's for the black community, right? Mm-hmm. Especially during the 70s and whatnot, 60s and 70s. Not a lot of films are being made for minorities or women or whatever. It really wasn't. And Hollywood at that time was dominated by the white male lead. So you got your blaxploitation films that actually featured the African American community, African American characters. Shaft is the sort of the king of the blaxploitation film genre. That was among the first times, other than what the hell is this? Other than Bill Cosby in I Spy, or Sidney Poitier in The Heat of the Night. You know what I mean? You had John Shaft. He because black men were not given those roles. So the blaxploitation film industry, I mean, there were some black filmmakers that were involved in it, but a lot of it were white filmmakers as well. But they, were showcasing these black stories. And granted, a lot of them do get criticized, and rightly so, by, going on with stereotypes of the time. But you still had, black heroes and heroines. That's how we got Fred the Hammer Williamson, Jim Brown, Pam Grier and Richard Roundtree especially were they're the king and queen of the blaxploitation genre. But we even got William Marshall, who was a classically trained theater actor who played Blackula, who, as over the top as the film is, he is the most grounded aspect of that film. And he plays an African prince who is turned into a vampire as a punishment by Count Dracula himself for standing up to him. So, I mean, those films, for all of the reliance on different stereotypes, it actually does show black characters, heroes and heroines that, kids at the time could look up to.
Yeah, and I think that because I'm not very well versed in exploitation film in general. I mean, I've seen a bunch of them now that I'm kind of looking it over. I've always sort of thought of the word exploitation as like a negative thing, right? Like we're baked into the name blaxploitation. I always sort of thought we're exploiting black actors or black stereotypes, and they are, right, to a point. But it's, in general, exploitation film is film that attempts to succeed based on exploiting current trends in film, right? And so, if all of a sudden, Star Wars pops off in 1977, now all of a sudden you have a whole slew of cheap Star Wars knockoffs, right? Trying to exploit the popularity of the other film. That still happens today. These were often like grindhouse movies or drive-in movies made on the cheap, just trying to sort of capitalize on popular trends in bigger film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll tell you that, well, the thing is, and I'm looking this up here, if you really want to read an article on it, a generalized article from Wikipedia. So blaxploitation is, and it's categorized as an ethnic subgenre of exploitation film that emerged in the U.S. during the early 70s. The term is sort of a portmanteau of the words black and exploitation, obviously. And this was coined in August of 1972 by the then president of the Beverly Hills Hollywood NAACP branch, Junius Griffin. And like I said, a lot of the times it does look like they're really profiting on the stereotypes at the time. But then you started to get films that really started to show things that were prevalent within the black communities. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, and what I'm seeing here is that film, like more contemporary films that would be considered blaxploitation films, would be movies like Black Klansman, for example. They're considering that, but then also more problematic films like Undercover Brother would also be a part of that, right? So you got to take the good with the bad, I guess. And I guess my original question was, like, how have black audiences interacted with these movies over the generations? I'm sure that, like, initially they were pretty pumped to have something.
I think Shaft is still really, really. I think Shaft is one of those characters that's always going to be beloved in the black community. Yeah. I mean, you see that we got a continuation of Shaft with Samuel L. Jackson in the early 2000s, where he played the nephew of Richard Roundtree's character Shaft, and then we got that sequel a couple of years ago, where I can't remember the young man's name, but he plays A-Train in The Boys. He plays the son of Shaft, and I'll tell you what, that is a good movie. I don't care what anyone says. I enjoyed that film very much. And you got some other films of the late 80s, Action Jackson, Last Dragon, Jackie Brown, Original Gangsters, which is a amazing blaxploitation film. It stars all of the big heavy hitters of the blaxploitation genre of the 70s, and it puts them in the mid 90s gang wars. And that's an amazing film. And you even look at if you haven't watched the film Dolomite's My Name back in 2019, where Eddie Murphy plays Rudy Ray Moore.
Right.
That's those are some other films. I mean, the thing is with blaxploitation films is, at least for me, speaking as a black man, I'm not speaking for the race, I'm not speaking for anybody, I'm just speaking for me. I like to be able to see funny story, like if it's a funny tale, like say, as much as I'm not a big fan of Undercover Brother, it is still kind of cute, it's kind of funny, and I can enjoy it. Or Black Dynamite. I like to be able to just sit back and just see that silliness and be able to see someone that looks like me taking on this role. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it seems that the relationship is pretty complex, right? Because I mean, obviously, you see, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, which is put out in the late '80s, and Keenen Ivory Wayans, who writes and directs this film, he obviously has some legitimate complaints about the genre, right? But he's still also, like you said, paying homage to the greats and the influence of the genre.
Well, if we didn't have blaxploitation film, I don't think we don't get a Keenen Ivory Wayans or a John Singleton. We don't get Spike Lee. We don't get a lot of these black filmmakers, because the thing is, with the positives that you get from the blaxploitation films, there's the negative that we get, and you get these young men and women who are watching these movies at the time. They're like, you know what? I can tell our story better.
Right. Which is true. And it's interesting because you get the sense that blaxploitation started as a way to exploit the African American community for box office dollars, but then it like inadvertently began to inspire a new generation of black filmmakers.
Right. Well, it also crossed cultural lines too, because there are some white people, some older white people. Like, I'm pretty sure if you start singing the Shaft theme song around your parents, they get into it.
Yeah.
And they're if you start talking to white men and women of in my age bracket, and you just start you say something like, they say that Cat Shaft is a bad mother. I get you. If you say that around 10, at least 6 will say, shut your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you can even
absolutely
include like the Jeffersons, because a lot of the TV shows of the era, the Jeffersons, Good Times, you know what I mean? These films also kind of opened the eyes of young white people at the time of what black people were, of black culture.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what also paved the way for, I hate using the term safe rappers or safe, but I mean like a Will Smith, or, you know what I mean? Yeah. It allows aspects of the black community to come into, quote unquote, middle America or white America.
The mainstream.
To sort of like come in and just say, look, we're here. Quit being afraid of us.
Yeah.
We're people just like you.
Yeah. Now, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka it is like, this is my favorite kind of comedy. I love a parody so much. Like, the jokes are so stupid. But the jokes are just, and also parodies tend to have a few jokes that repeat themselves over and over and over again throughout the movie, and they just get funnier every time.
Yes. Yes, they do.
I think that, for sure, I think that the idea that this kid, Junebug, dies of too many gold chains is so funny.
How did he go to the bathroom with all that shit on?
Every time. It made me laugh every time somebody asked that question.
Same here. Like, oh my goodness. I especially love Clu Gallagher, who plays the detective, the lieutenant at the very, very beginning. I enjoy him because he was in 2 other films that I really enjoyed in my youth. Return of the Living Dead, that I keep throwing on the Halloween listener's choice that no one ever selects, and probably the most hated of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, but I actually enjoy Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Mm-hmm. And he's just so funny. Oh, Jesus Christ. How did he go to the bathroom with all that on?
It was whenever they uncovered the body and you saw all those chains, or the picture that he took. Right. When she's like, he took a picture of himself just before he died. And like, it's so ridiculous. Like, that's one of the jokes that keeps on giving. And then the other one is, do you want to go out by the window or by the stairs?
Yeah,
And they're like, we'll go the stairs,
the stairs.
which is the first time you think, oh, they're going to walk out, right? Like, they're voluntarily leaving. And then, like, they still get tossed out. Even later, when they talk to their employer, they still get tossed down the stairs. It's the best.
Absolutely, and then we get it paid off at the end, where he's like, "Man, this is bullshit." Ah! It's like, didn't homie know about the elevator? But and then like Sharon and I are watching it, and she's like shaking her head because I guess for her the joke was starting to get old. But that's the beauty of a good joke. When it starts to finally get old, that's when the joke is over. You can still laugh about it. And then she sees him at the end being led away in handcuffs. She goes, wait, he survived? I'm like, yeah. And she just started laughing.
Right.
And she's just shaking her head like, oh my God. That's like, that is humor played up perfect.
Right. Also, like another like kind of stupid joke that's a little bit telegraphed that still makes me laugh every time it happens. In any movie is like the funeral that's super well attended by accident. And then when they figure out that it's actually Junebug's wedding, they all leave and take their flowers with them.
Yeah, they just take everything. And it's just like, damn. Even Sharon shook her head. She's like, wow, that's mean. Like, that's the point.
Yeah, that's...
Or what about the joke in, especially you get this in a lot of indie films. Or not even indie films, because this especially happened in Beverly Hills Cop with Eddie Murphy. The stunt man who looks nothing like the
yes. Oh my God. I lost it in that scene. So like, not only do you have this great bit where the mom is consistently beating everybody's ass, but in this diner fight scene, the cuts are so abrupt and she's being played by a white man with a mustache.
And we just don't notice, and then she just comes out of the flip like.
Right, it's so good. That may be my favorite bit in the whole movie. I love that kind of shit.
That was such a great bit. Although I think one of Sharon's favorites, and she went to the grocery store, so I can't ask her. But I think the cramps bit really had her going too. And what's funny is that, yo, you get the most mellow woman in the world, but when she's in pain, you best just to leave her the hell alone.
Yeah, I mean, like
it is safer that way.
The period demon, right? Was one of those moments. That was one of the moments where I was like, this joke to me feels pretty lazy, but also like pretty 1988. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it also kind of showed though too, and what made it funny is that character, she was played as so docile, but at that moment, she's the one you do not want to mess with. And that's why, and that's kind of why period. Like, here's the thing, jokes about women's reproduction, it is very, very lazy, but I think as men,
especially the like, you're in a bad mood, it must be your period, right? Like,
right. I hate that. But what I do like is the whole, I've asked you to leave me alone and you won't. Now you're going to die. Yeah. I like that aspect of the joke. That's the aspect of the joke that I like. Because at that moment, she's also not a victim. Right. The guy who would be the aggressor is now terrified for his entire existence. And that's what I mean by, like, Keenen Ivory Wayans is such a comedic genius that just when it might start to be offensive, it becomes hilarious. And every man can at least, well, not every man, but there are men that can relate to the fact that they took it one step too far. And it doesn't even have to be during, quote unquote, a period. It could just be, you know, the most mellow woman in the world is just not in a good mood that day. And you pushed her way too far. Yeah.
Now, another of those jokes that like went on and on and on was when Jack got picked up in the bar by the woman, and then they went back to her place, and she just started taking like her hair off and her, you know, all of it, right? She
it's not even the right color.
That was funny. Like, I thought that was pretty funny.
That was funny because I mean,
honestly, the payoff for that whole scene was when she was like, "Don't make me hop after you." Like,
oh my god! And you know, Anne-Marie Johnson, she's another actress that's very, very unappreciated for her comedic time, and she was in Living Color during the later years. But she's also been in some great movies. She was also in Hollywood Shuffle that I referenced earlier. She was also in another great early 90s black-led comedy, Strictly Business, with Tommy Davidson and Halle Berry's first film, I do believe. And she's very, very funny in that, even though she's an antagonist.
Right.
But she is a no. Leave my teddy bear alone. Sharon had a Build-A-Bear made for me when we first got together, and Odette was like, "Hey, I want to chew on it."
Right.
Don't
now,
make me hop after you.
So Damon Wayans plays Leonard, and his buddy is Willie, right?
Yeah, played by Kadeem Hardison.
Right.
He's most famous for playing Dwayne Wayne in A Different World. The spinoff for the Cosby Show.
Yeah. Now these two guys, I think Damon Wayans is pretty funny, and I like these two in this movie. I thought Willie was really funny, and their interactions were great, right? Because like they get their asses beat by
everybody.
by everybody, but by Junebug's mom. And then whenever they go back to Mr. Big, he's like, "What happened to y'all?" And Willie's like, she beat our ass. Right. And then Leonard is like, and then the soldier boy came in there, and he was big, and he beat our asses so bad. The guy's like, "Soldier boy? Like, who are you talking about?" Like
the soldier dude. The soldier dude. He was like, Uncle Mr. Big. Yeah. Uncle Mr. Big. That really had me laughing too. Uncle Mr. Big.
And I'll tell you, like, I think that this is like, so the times that I laughed the hardest, right? Mm-hmm. I laughed really hard in the stunt double scene. I thought that was so funny. Mm-hmm. And then when Kung Fu Joe.
Oh, man. Great Stephen James, man.
I think Kung Fu Joe might have been my favorite character because every time he moved, he was like making that sound. Like he couldn't even walk without making karate sounds. It was so good.
That. Kung Fu Joe, the master of karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, and all kinds of shit you ain't never heard of.
and they gave him the old Indiana Jones special real quick, right?
They really did.
Because and I was like, there's no way that this doesn't end with Kung Fu Joe he's definitely getting shot.
Yeah, that's really what made me laugh. He's like, he's just like, what are you gonna do? They just shoot him, but then he shows up like the next scene with blood on him without a hole on him.
Right, and that's the parody aspect of it, right? Like making fun of how these action heroes always get out like relatively unscathed.
Right, and shout out to we lost Stephen James back in 1993 of I know it was cancer. I can't remember if it was prostate or colon cancer, but you want to talk about a guy? He was the lead-in to Michael Jai White, in my opinion, as far as handsome, ripped as hell, a legit badass with comedic timing.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sorry, Michael Jai White, you want to talk about a guy who, I know he's not in this movie, but he has been in the blaxploitation genre with Black Dynamite. You want to talk about a guy who's grown as an actor? Michael Jai White is light years ahead of the guy who played Spawn back in the mid-90s. But Stephen James, man, he is so hilarious. Where they're in there shooting out the liquor bottles, and he's throwing stars. Or when they first meet him, and he's like, "Oh, slapping fives,
right?
Doing the karate moves, slapping fives."
It's he just like walks in the room immediately, hitting the karate sounds, and it just like. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. It's so ridiculous. But that's the exact kind of thing that you want out of a parody film, is that kind of silliness, right?
Right. And he's like, "They killed teacher! teacher. Master Lee was your teacher. No, acting.
Right. Like, and see, now that's a joke that, like, that one doesn't work for me as well. Like, I mean, like, that one's pretty obvious. They're setting up a joke, right?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I like parody jokes where, like, you know the joke's coming, but it's so stupid.
Well, what about the one where Jim Brown and Isaac Hayes are standing there with Bernie Casey, and they look at Keenen Ivory Wayans, and he goes, "What makes you think you can be a black hero? I'm an ex-football player."
Yeah, okay.
And Jim Brown right in the face when he says it, and he's like,
"Yeah,
hey, you got me."
Yeah, right. That did make me laugh, right? I did like that. And then the other thing that just, again, I was rolling was the big hat policy at the restaurant.
Dude, the bartender's hat and dying, dude.
I loved that shit. That was so funny.
With the little people inside the hats, like we got to see Mr. Parker from Friday. Bro, I'll tell you one thing right now. If we do, wait a second. We have another Plotaholics tic-tac-toe.
Uh-oh.
Shane. Tony Cox, AKA, I can't remember. I know his last name was Evans in this movie, but he also played Mr. Parker in Friday, and he played Willie's partner Marcus in Bad Santa.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we got a Plotaholics tic-tac-toe right there. So
I'm working on our I gotta see some of these big hats, you know.
But I'll tell you, man, every time even Tony Cox being on the screen, yeah, look at that hat, look at that, look at that hat. And hold on, I want to see the bartender's hat.
Yeah. These are so good. Like, the hats are so.
Look at his hat! Look at the brim on that hat. It looks like a duckbill.
Yeah, man. And now he's throwing. They're shooting guns and he's throwing ninja stars. That's the best, dude.
Go Fever.
This guy.
How is his neck not broken?
Yeah, that hat is wild.
That is insane.
I am such a fan of the big hat policy at this place.
I'm a big fan of the sight gags. The sight gags of this film are so good. And once again, that's really what you want. Like you said, you're talking about what you want out of a parody film. The sight gags do it too. And we're going to see this next week in The Naked Gun.
Yeah, for sure.
The sight gags are hilarious. And in this, they're really good. And I think the one great thing about I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, and especially scenes like this, is that it literally just makes fun of things that, at least in the Black community, it's supposed to be normal. Like,
well, I think
the exclusive clubs and the street life, like even the ghetto Olympics that they had going on.
Oh my God, the gang Olympics, right?
The gang Olympics, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, look, if you live in an urban society, you know, you're used to seeing cars getting stripped and stuff like that, and people robbing someone and taking off running. But it's really played off for laughs in this, and it's almost like, yeah, I know what that's from. This is funny. This is, you know what I mean? It's almost like they're pointing out the ridiculousness. And it's almost like taking away the negative of it and just making it fun.
Well, and there's something to, like, saying, look at the ridiculous nature of this thing, right? Like,
right.
There's something to that. I was gonna point out too that there is something in this film about. It feels to me like Wayans is in a way trying to update the genre. There are a lot of moments where he pokes fun at specific tropes from older films in the genre, right? Like I'm thinking of the pimp character, right? Who
Yes.
who walks out all done up. Everybody
Fly
at first,
guy.
right? At
Fly
first,
guy.
everybody's like, "Oh man, like look at him. He's so tall. He's so fly." All this, and then immediately they start like making fun of him, right? And he gets super
Right.
sensitive,
And then he breaks the fishbowl.
right? So there was that moment where it was so clear that he was like making fun of this trope from earlier versions of this kind of movie, and then also with the theme song music where you had Wayans' character.
John Slade is walking out to the Shaft theme because every
Right.
good hero should have theme music. And then the Jack Spade has the updated.
Yeah,
like,
just like a
KRS
DJ and a MC.
Right. And it was real funny. It was real cool. And yeah, you're right. He's updating the genre. I would love to see an I'm Gonna Get You Sucker too.
Yeah.
But film today.
Yeah, with Damon Wayans Jr. as the young gun, right?
Yeah, and Keenen Ivory Wayans is playing
right
himself as the John Slade character, but Jack Spade as the retired black hero.
Right, but then Damon Wayans is still just playing a henchman.
Yes, yes, I want that so much. Can we just talk about for a second too the fact that they got John Vernon to play Mr. Big. And I love how they even made fun of that. Where it's like, what? A lot of respected actors have been in exploitation genre. And they just start going down the line. And like, this film is so self-aware.
Which is what a good parody should be, right?
Right. Absolutely.
There should be a good parody should always have treat the audience with like a wink and a nod.
Right. And you're never trying to insult your audience.
Right, because typically an audience that's watching a parody of a film like this is already at least partially a fan, if not, they're at least aware of what you're making fun of, if not a fan of what you're making fun of, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But it was really, really great. And even his timing, like he's the most straight-laced character in the movie, other than Bernie Casey, who plays John Slade. Although even Bernie Casey has his moments where he's silly. But John Vernon is the most sort of grounded character. But he still just fits perfectly into it, which is hilarious. And I love the fact, though, that I'm trying to think, because there's so much to touch on in this movie. Like Clarence Williams III, aka Link Hayes from the Mod Squad, as the last leader of the Black Revolutionary Army, and he's married to Jan Brady.
Yes, okay. Yeah, and they were playing the Brady Bunch theme song in the background.
Dude, shout out to Eve Plum too, because you want to talk about someone that at the time, and I'm sure it's still that way to this day, she really embraces her past and she cashes in on it. Good for her.
The Kalinga bit was also like one of those. It's a moment that gives rise to like a lot of jokes, right? Like the bean thing kept coming up.
Yeah, the bean pie, the bean
soda.
She makes the greatest bean dishes in all the world.
Whenever their little white kids came out to do their book report on Abraham Lincoln, so good.
This poor white trash was killed by another piece of poor white trash. And it's just like, preach, brother.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of little bits in the movie that just kind of like slip by, right? Like even the Chris Rock bit, which you touched on, where he's looking to buy like a rack of ribs, and then he tries to figure out like how much each rib costs, and he decides like that's 50 cents a rib. And so he's like, I'll have one rib, and then he wants some sauce to dip it in. And then the guy's right, and the guy's like, well, it cost me 50 cents for the container. And he's like, well, how about I give you 15 cents, you just pour it in my hands.
And then he goes, order something, we'll get out. So he goes, all right. He goes, then puts some money in his pocket and pulls like a wad of bills out. You got change for 100?
That's good, man. Like,
or better yet, when when Willie and the other guy are trying to go after Hammer and Slammer. And he goes, wait a minute. Man, you fired a 357 Magnum. That only holds 6 bullets. I counted at least 25 shots. And you ain't reloaded once.
Those are the kinds of jokes that I love in a parody film, right?
Right.
Like that, like self-aware that this is the kind of bullshit that happens in these movies all the time. And just like calling it out, right? I think that's when parodies are at their best.
Right, especially when Isaac Hayes is he's just a walking weapon shed toward the end of the movie. And then he slips and falls and every gun goes off. It's like, what about Hammer? Oh, Hammer will be fine. Luckily it's just a couple of flesh wounds. Like, wait, what?
Right, yeah, I mean, that's kind of like the whole deal, right?
Right, or I love the over dramatized where he has to pull the splinter out.
Yeah.
Or even still when, he even makes fun of the trope where he's got, we get all mesmerized about the ribbons and the medals that servicemen wear. And then he goes, what the hell are all these medals for? Oh, well, this is for typing and this is for clerical work. And you know what I mean? And it's so well done. And even when he picks up when John Slade picks up the guy who got shot after he proposed and uses him as a human shield and then steps on him and the body farts when he steps on him.
Yeah.
Oh man, this movie the jokes never stop, even from the theme song.
Yeah.
Well,
and I was happy after last week we asked for like a Hard Ticket to Hawaii style theme song.
We got it.
And this week we got it.
I'm gonna get you, sucker. You dirty mother. Don't say that. I remember that song used to come on the radio and I'd be like,
I wish I could play it, but unfortunately now that we're YouTubing, we will get a copyright strike.
Yeah. And I really think, I really don't think that should be fair because I'm sure that song hasn't been played on the radio in like.
Honestly, we would be fine. Like we've won almost all of the appeals that we've put in for that. It's just like another wrinkle.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Well, remember when we did, remember our Masters of the Universe episode and they hit us for using the intro?
It's the only one that still sticks.
Yeah.
It's the only one that we haven't gotten rid of. Well, I don't know. Maybe there was one in Boys in the Hood that we didn't get rid of. Whenever you remember when Morpheus was talking about billboards.
Yes, and the song
and
was
a car drove by.
Audible. The song
a car drove by
audible.
Playing the song.
Yeah, it's not even audible, and we got hit for that. That is unreal, man.
Yeah, we've made a bunch of money off of it too, so it's a good thing they flagged us.
Yeah, I know, right? All the Plotaholics podcast money we're just swimming in.
Yeah, and it's all from that episode.
Oh, absolutely. We're Scrooge McDuck in that shit.
Yeah, we are. And we have enough gold coins to Scrooge McDuck it at the same time.
Exactly. So what up?
And we barely ever even touch when we're swimming around in our money pit.
That's right. So
we only touch fingertips.
So
I'll be right here.
Elliot's mom was the worst.
She was the worst.
Dude, I swear, if I really want to, you know what? If I really wanted to piss people off, all these people that flip out about black actors being put into these different roles or whatever, I want a black remake of E.T. with Keenen Ivory Wayans directing it.
Yes.
Just to piss people off. And when he goes, be good, bitch, before he goes.
Now, who do you cast as E.T.? Can it be Kevin Hart, and can we not do any makeup? Can it just be like little Kevin Hart in a blanket?
Or what? Remember those Little Penny Hardaway? Remember Little Penny Hardaway, the little puppet from the No Diggity video?
Oh yeah.
Let him be either him or Kevin Hart. They're about the same height, right?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I was thinking about this earlier when we were talking about the different bits in this movie. I think this movie could have done with a sticky hands bit. We've talked about sticky hands in the past.
Yeah.
Sticky hands are always a win. I feel like a Kung Fu Joe sticky hand ninja star moment could have been a lot of fun.
Oh, where he throws the ninja star is stuck to the sticky hand, so it pops right back into his hand.
And like sticks into his hand, right? Like he's able to like one of those like floppy like arcade sticky hands, you know, that you get.
Yes.
It's like that. It's like, so he's got this like weird mutant power. Now I don't know where the sticky hands came from. Maybe he like got into glue or something.
He makes it in his body like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man.
So instead of Kung Fu Joe, he's like the world's worst Marvel superhero.
I would love that. Glue guy.
Glue star.
Holy crap. Sharon really just came home. Like, I did not expect it. She really just Kung Fu Joe'd upstairs and into the bathroom, like out of nowhere. I swear she came like, oh, I'm going to kick your ass now.
I like that.
Hey, hon, come here a second. I have a question for you. I seriously want to get her. I want to get a woman's perspective. Now, did Michelle watch this with you?
She did, yeah.
What does she think of the PMS joke? Of the cramps?
I mean, she didn't say one way or the other, really.
Okay, come here a second, huh?
Yeah.
Now when we were talking about the PMS joke,
Yeah.
from "I'm Gonna Get You Sucka,"
Yeah.
that was funny to you, right? I mean, was it kind of funny, or
Yeah,
did you find it kind of stupid?
No, a little bit of both.
Okay, so
I mean,
it was one of
you
those.
could say that about all of the jokes in the movie, though.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much all the jokes were kind of funny but stupid. But that was honestly though, I'll tell you the truth. Whenever Sharon is having cramps, she warns me ahead of time. She goes, just so you know, it's that kind of day.
Yeah.
I'm like, understood.
I am,
know now what I can and can't get away with.
Yeah.
Oh,
Checking in
Ivy
on a little Ivy cam over here.
Look at her go.
Look at her it's a new animal cam.
Animal cam. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right.
Well, why do we have to single Ivy out?
Well, we do have snow back there in the background as well.
Informer, I'm thinking about now. I lay a boom boom now. Oh, wrong snow. Sorry.
We've lost connection to Animal Cam.
I guess the cam didn't like my recreation of the song Informer.
Well, it is funny that you mentioned that because as soon as you stopped, it came back.
Hey-o.
But yeah, so I did want to say we mentioned him earlier, but I was just going to say that it was really nice to see John Witherspoon in this.
Yeah, it was as the minister.
Yeah, I always like to see him. I think that he's always used really well in movies where he plays like a smaller part, and because he's never like the guy, it's always like a surprise when he shows up, you know, and I like that.
Yeah, John, the loss of John Witherspoon is still felt in, comedy. And another shout out to another actor that we lost a long, long time ago, Robin Harris as the bartender when they go into One-Eyed Sam's. Robin Harris was he was a guy that he was ready to blow up when we lost him. You remember when we had to talk about Bernie Mac about a year or so ago, and I was saying that it was much the same as with Robin Harris, where if Robin Harris, we don't lose Robin Harris impromptu, he's blown up.
Yeah.
So, but this is a film. This is a who's who film of just great acting, just great everything. Everything about this movie is just so much fun.
Yeah, and as somebody who grew up with the Wayans brothers brand of comedy, like in Scary Movie and whatnot, it totally makes sense where they get their sense of humor, right? Like their sense of humor is obviously a little bit more like late 90s, early 2000s, but it is so obviously on display here. Like the 1988 version of that is on display here. So it totally makes sense. They come from this family, and I would argue that, they probably do a nice job of updating the parody genre for the 2000s up to the point that they have to surrender Scary Movie to whoever took it over.
Yeah, well, I'm also a big fan. Like, when you talking about self-awareness, when Kim Wayans is on screen and she's just like doing, he goes, "Hey, who is that?" That's the director's sister. Keenen Ivory Wayans just like, ooh. That was so good.
That's good.
So good. Yeah, this. I mean, we've said so much about this movie already, and even though we'll end up saying the same stuff over and over again, it doesn't make it any less true.
Yeah, and I would say that it's a really, I would argue, though it is like a comedy and slapstick largely. It feels like a very important moment in cinema for what it's doing. Like, I think that any genre has fully arrived once it has become the target of parody, right? And so once you have reached the point where you are making fun of yourself, like now you're a real genre, right? Like you've lived the full life of a genre.
Right, I agree. And well, it's just like musicians say they know they've made it when Weird Al makes a parody of their music.
Absolutely.
And Kurt Cobain, who was a guy who was not into anything mainstream, I mean, he was miserable when Nirvana hit big.
Yeah.
But he was okay with Weird Al making a parody of his music.
Yeah.
He was into it. So, yeah, and I think that, this is a film that, I mean, look, let's just be real for a second, okay? There's been a lot of times where white people have tried to make movies with black voices and it hits and misses. I think that a parody of the blaxploitation film being made with black voices is what keeps it from being offensive.
Oh, for sure.
And disrespectful.
You could have had a very similar movie made by the Steve Martins of the world, and it would have come across as completely tone deaf.
Right. And that's nothing against Steve Martin. I think Steve Martin is still one of the most brilliant minds in comedy to this day. But if he would have done this film, it would have been terrible. It would have been. Well, and
I think that's evidence to his genius, right? Is that Steve Martin is self-aware enough to know not to do this.
Yeah. Same with like as tone deaf as Bill Murray can be, and his most recent controversy shows it. Even he knows there's certain things you can't touch.
Right. And who is the comedian that you think would transgress like this? Who's the white comedian or white director that you think his hubris is so great that he would try to do this?
You mean that is just so...
He thinks his shit is so good. Is that like a... I don't know. I mean, I would hate to like...
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to say Spielberg, but Spielberg did a great job. And I talked about this during our Ginger Snaps episode, which you can check out now over on the YouTube.
Absolutely.
But Steven Spielberg was smart enough to really listen to the black voices to make a good quality film. So obviously you can't throw him in there. But I seriously think if you want to talk about a bougie-ass white director that would probably try to do something like this, it's hard to say because I think that, I mean, honestly, Judd Apatow maybe.
That was exactly who I was about to say. But I still think that even he wouldn't touch it.
Oh, no. I
mean, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, Judd Apatow back at the height of his powers would probably try it. You know what, though? For whatever reason, and I feel bad that this name popped into my head. I could almost see James Gunn trying something.
Yeah.
Almost. But I think that James Gunn would make it. But I think that if James Gunn did it, he is smart enough to go the Steven Spielberg route to listen to the black voices. And he would just be sort of like writer-director in theory.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I think you see white directors tackle this stuff a lot more in drama than in comedy.
But I also think that a lot of white writers and directors are also... I think we're in an era now where they're realizing we can't tell the stories of minorities.
Absolutely.
And I think they're finally understanding that. And that's why I'm very happy to see where we have Pacific Islanders / Asian movie months, and we're seeing, we got the Taika Waititis of the world
Love
that
it.
are tackling these things. And because at the end of the day, and those people that are tone deaf enough to be like, oh, why do we need all that? Because guess what? You white. You don't know what it's like to be Hispanic. You don't know what it's like to be black. You don't know what
Right.
it's like to be Asian, Pacific Islander. Just like I'm black. I don't know what it's like to be any of these people.
Right. Yeah, and at the very least, I mean, that's not to say that a white director couldn't do it, but he would need a lot of help, right?
And he would need to be smart enough to know when to back off.
Yeah, and when to like consult his cast or his assistants or his advisors, and understand that. I mean, honestly, if a white director were ever even approached to tell a story like this, he would be best served to step away from it and suggest a person of color to take a spot, right? And there's not a do what?
I said, I'd be like, if I was a white director and they said, hey, we're going to do I'm Going to Get You Sucker too, call Keenen Ivory Wayans, call Robert Townsend, call Damon Wayans.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? That like there's, we've talked about how there should be a seat at the table for everyone, and that's not to say to the exclusion of anyone, right? Like that's not,
right.
No one is asking all the white directors to stand up and go take a seat somewhere else, right? Like it's just like there's enough room here. You're just taking up too much of the table yourself. Spread the love a little bit more fairly, right?
That's like being in a king size bed and sprawling out to the point that your partner has to sleep on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. There's room there for everybody. I mean, there's room for everybody.
Right.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say the fact that there are people that are so threatened that people of color are getting a seat at the table, that just goes to show what they want. They don't care. And those are the type of people that want an apartheid society 2.0.
Yeah. And we've talked about how important representation is, so we're not going to necessarily like go back down that road, but it is incredibly important. And the only way to get really great representation is if you give those people who those stories belong to an opportunity to tell those stories in authentic ways, right? And it's good to see that we're getting more and more of that as we move forward, and that is exciting. And I think that I'm Going to Get You Sucka rightly has its place in that history.
I agree 100%. And I think that I'm Going to Get You Sucka it's as much of a staple in black cinema as any film. It is that important. Honestly, I would say that I'm Going to Get You Sucka should be like Black Cinema Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I know. And yeah, that makes sense. I can get on board with that as a member of the white delegation. I can support that.
That was so great. That is comedic timing personified right there, buddy.
Right. Let's see. I'm Gonna Get You Sucka was released in 1988, initially with wide release in early 89. It was made on a $3 million budget and grossed $13 million at the box office. It's currently sporting have you looked it up yet?
Yes, I have. 62% on the tomato meter with 29 reviews, 70% audience score from 10,000 plus ratings.
Excellent. And with that, we're going to get Bartender Smiley in here and get you our ratings.
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So what can I get you?
All right. Mr. Tan, would you like to take first bat here?
Yeah, sure. I'll step up to the plate. I'm Gonna Get You Sucka. Like I already said, this is a staple of Black Cinema Hall of Fame. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it takes itself just seriously enough to pay homage to a genre that really, really helped build Black cinema. It's funny. And even when it's telling on social commentary, it's still relevant to this day. And does this movie accomplish every single one of its goals? Absolutely, and then some. This is a zero-shot film for me.
And I appreciate that. I think for me, it probably has to be a 1, only because as funny as it always was, for the most part, and as much as I laughed in it, there were a couple of times where like the jokes just like missed for me, or the jokes or I got like a little bogged down for it, or it just wasn't a joke for me. Right. So, you know, obviously I'm not the target audience for this movie. Right. But I can still absolutely appreciate what it is and its importance. It's just, it doesn't, I think because I'm not the ideal viewer of it, it just doesn't hit for me on every cylinder, right?
That makes sense. But
that is in no way like a negative, a slight against the film, right? I don't think that this movie should be for everybody. I think that it's to its strength that it's not.
I agree 100%. I think also to your point though, where it's not for you, but you're still appreciating it, and I think that just adds to the strength of the film as a whole.
Yeah, no,
that
absolutely.
Even those that it's not made for can laugh at it, have fun with it, and so yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because as I was watching it, I was wondering. Is something that Chappelle liked to talk about a lot when he was initially leaving Comedy Central. And it's that his white audience did not understand his jokes. They laughed for the wrong reasons, right?
Right.
And I often think about that whenever I'm watching a black comedy like this one that does utilize certain stereotypes, right? And I find myself like I am laughing because the stereotype is ridiculous, and that is the point of the joke, right? The joke is to point out the absurd nature of the stereotype. But correct. I would assume that there are other people that would watch this movie and laugh because they find the stereotype funny, right? And correct. That's sort of that difference that Chappelle talks about, and that a lot of black comics face, I think, is that you know, you tell these kinds of jokes to point out the absurd nature of the thing that you're making fun of, not to like actually use that as the joke, right?
Case in point, you look at some of those minstrel shows of the 20s, 30s, and 40s, where you got the black characters with the over-exaggerated voice and all of that. You know, that's making fun of the stereotype.
Yeah.
That's making fun of that's laughing.
That's using the stereotype to make fun of the person, humor. Right?
Right. Where with films like this and with what Chappelle did, you're making fun of the stereotype to point out how stupid it is.
Yeah, and you're making fun of the racist who believes that stereotype.
Correct.
It's the reason that The Office works, right? And we've talked about this
correct.
Because Michael Scott is not a character that we're supposed to identify with, right? He's illustrating what's wrong with people who believe those things.
Correct. And people that just have that mindset, that that idea that they're so great and blah, blah, blah. That, you know, basically Michael Scott is essentially the TV version of Bill Lumbergh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
That's what makes The Office great. And when you make fun of something that is wrong, that is, I think in a lot of ways, that's really what makes comedy comedy. Otherwise, it is just exploitation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that is absolutely, you're onto something there. I am currently pulling up the podcast recording schedule, Brian.
Yep, I'm looking at it right now.
I am here to let you and everyone know that next week we will be discussing Hot Shots.
Yeah. Now, do you want to do part 1 or part 2?
Well, we'll definitely do part 1 because I've never seen it.
Well, that Top Gun Maverick is going to be coming out in a couple of weeks, so I think doing Hot Shots is definitely going to be worth our time.
Yeah, so we'll definitely do Hot Shots, and if I get around to watching the sequel, then maybe we'll do that too. But
I'm going to watch both of them at some point this week.
Well, you're a completionist, right?
I really am.
Yeah.
And then the week after next, it'll be The Naked Gun, which I'm very excited for because that's one of my favorite films of all. That's among my favorite comedies of all time.
Absolutely. And then we're going to wrap things up on this particular subject matter with Scary Movie.
Yeah. And the first two Scary Movies are the only ones that I've watched in the series. I have no desire to watch any of the other ones. So I'm literally only going to watch the 1 and 2.
Yeah. So that's where you'll find us next week. We, as always, will be live on Twitch at some point after 11 a.m. and before 1 p.m.
Yep.
And so if you want to come hang out, you're welcome to it. If not, that's okay. You can always catch us over on the YouTubes or anywhere you get your podcasts if you don't care to look at our talking faces. But with that being said, we will probably talk to you next week.
Later.
I wasn't ready. Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo. Oh my God! If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.